Welcome, Spartans, to Halo TV Plus, part of Evolve, your home for Halo. I'm your host, Oran, and on Halo TV Plus, my guests and I recap Halo's original TV show, Halo the Series, and we discuss its contents and unique canon within the Silver Timeline. Joining me tonight is Aaron. Welcome to the show, Aaron. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I am back. I have returned from the dead. I'm here to do a show.
We all have. It's been a kind of wild ride for the Evolved crew over the last couple of years, and it's kind of nice. New year, bringing everyone back. Did you check out those trailers?
I have looked at them all. You could say it's New Year, New Me, New Halo. There's a very different vibe with these trailers. I like it. I'm enjoying what I'm seeing.
I want to be cautiously optimistic, kind of like I was back when the first season was coming out. We were all really hyped, and I think we got a lot of things out of it, but there was also some not so liked things and left a weird taste in the Halo community, to put it the best, I think. But yeah, so we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to primarily look at the episode titles and kind of derive some plot elements from them for the second season of the show. We did one of these episodes for season 1. We took a look at the core canon from the Halo universe and to see how it might be utilized or interpreted or reimagined in the first season of the show. And we're kind of doing the same thing. We are going to build on that, kind of see what we know already for season 2, and just kind of invite some core canon knowledge for those of you who may not otherwise know what the extended lore is. We know of the episode titles and we know some new cast members, but for the most part, it's all kind of speculation, I think. I think we kind of knew a lot more going into the first season, so we might have a little bit more to kind of look at. If you wanted to check out that old episode, I just looked it up. It was Colin and I. We did that for season 1, and it talks about people like Soren, talks about the Spartan 2 program, talks about what Planet Reach is, what the Rubble is, and Madrigal, and the human conflict that happened before the Covenant. So it kind of gives some nice backstory, who the Forerunners are, and kind of does that old deep dive if you just kind of want a refresher, or maybe you're new to the show and you didn't catch season 1 and you might just skip it because it did get those mixed reviews. I think you should watch it, but it's out there in the world for you to check out. But before we dive into our work today, if you're new to the show, welcome. Halo TV Plus is part of Evolve that hosts other podcasts like Podcast Evolved, HCS Pro Talk. It's our partnership over with Will and Josh that do all the pro happenings over at the Halo community. Mission Debrief, Builds With Blocks, and Halo Book Club. You can learn more about each of those shows on our website, evolvedhalo.com. Don't forget to check out our social media. We have Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We do have another show. It's a Patreon exclusive show called I Would Have Been Your Podcast. It discusses a variety of different things, just kind of like hot topics that are going on, general video game things, kind of personal things within the hosts' lives. And you can check that out, as long as other Patreon exclusive rewards, such as early episodes, our original 18-song soundtrack, unique swag, and our private Discord channel. We'd like to take a moment to thank all of our Patreon subscribers. Thank you guys so much for continuing your support on our show. And you guys have keeping us going. We're approaching 10 years. I don't know if anyone's taken a look at that recently, but it's pretty wild that we've been doing this for so long, even with some of the kind of breaks that we have been taking throughout the years. But you can head over to patreon.com/HaloEvolved to learn more about what it means to become a patron and check it out. So, Aaron, when was the last time you watched the Halo show? Let's kind of start there. Have you seen it since it aired almost 2 years ago?
I rewatched it once in that time, and that was it. I have not looked at it since. To be honest, it wasn't particularly like a reflection of the Halo TV show. For a while, I did not watch a lot of TV, and then in the last couple of years, Star Trek's been doing a lot of good things, so I was like sort of watching other things, but I haven't gone back to rewatch season 1. I will probably squeeze it in now before season 2 because I'd like to sort of watch it fresh and get the whole season out of the way and be ready to roll for, what are we now, a week away?
No, we're about 2 weeks away from recording. About 12 days from recording. When this episode comes out, it'll be about 9 or so. You can kind of watch one episode a night, kind of leading up to season 2 premiere. I haven't watched it since it aired. I did the show back in May of 22. I immediately started doing some traveling, went back to work, and just kind of got real busy with some things, and it kind of just left my sort of interest for a while. But I do want to get back into it. I want to be able to watch more episodes back to back, because I do feel that the way they were filmed a certain way, I do think that some of them pair really nicely together as like a 2-part sort of experience. And, maybe we'll learn some new things. So I'm going to be rewatching it, and next week, I'll kind of get into this a little later, but we're going to kind of talk about maybe what a reviewing might yield to the conversation, and maybe what we want out of season 2 based off of season 1. I'm getting pumped. Every time I rewatch a trailer for this show, it's getting me excited to check out the new content and just kind of reigniting that Halo passion that I think I've kind of put to the side over the last couple of years. I do want to say from the get-go that the nature of this episode is kind of going to be spoilery. We don't know what's going to happen per se in season 2, but based off of the episode titles, based off what we know in the core canon, we can infer quite a bit. So if you're one that wants to go in relatively blind, then maybe skip this episode. I don't really want you to not listen, but I just want to be, forward that we're going to say things that have happened, and we can kind of infer what is most likely going to happen, at least the big beats for these episodes and maybe for the season as a whole. And we'll just kind of take it from there. So that was your little warning. But it's kind of funny because the first episode is really kind of the most unknown, I would say. I feel like all the other episodes are a little bit more detailed, but this first episode is just called Sanctuary. And all that we really know about the first episode is that it takes place 6 months after the ending of season 1. And the only sort of connection to the word sanctuary in the Halo universe is there's a multiplayer map in Halo 2 called Sanctuary, and it just takes place on Delta Halo, and it's like Forerunner ruins, has that good old Forerunner runic architecture, and it's been remade throughout Halo's video game sort of lifespan, so it's a pretty popular map. But outside of that, I couldn't really find any specific sort of detail, I guess. So I think Sanctuary might be used a little bit more thematically in this case.
My immediate thought off the top of my head is we are going to hammer home in this episode that Reach is the last bastion of humanity in this universe apart from Earth. I think it's very much going to be, we're going to start this episode, the Covenant are wiping us out, Reach is Sanctuary, and we're just going to hammer that home for the whole episode. This is the last safe space. I would be willing to bet that we'll get that Atriox is glassing the fuck out of everything and shit's going bad.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption. I think much like the opening episode on season 1, it kind of had that drill site that gets attacked by Covenant and the Spartans come in and kind of save them. I think it's going to be similar. There might be some sort of attack that maybe they lose somewhere in the galaxy, and it's everything's getting real dark, and they kind of go back to Reach.
Test your lore knowledge here off the top of my head. What did they call the asteroid plan in the rubble in the Cole Protocol? What was that? Because that would tie in with Soren. What if the rubble's
the
attacked?
Asteroid plan?
Do you remember in the rubble they have this plan where they equip an asteroid with a load of slipspace drives, and they use it to take is that the rubble, or am I confusing that with a different one of the Halo stories? I thought it was the rubble.
I don't
Aren't they trading with the Kigyar in the Cole Protocol, and they're offering them better human slipspace drives than what the Covenant give them, and then at the last minute the Covenant attack, and I think they they have their main asteroid and it's literally filled full of slip space drives and they slip space it out of the system. That's their like last move. I wonder something like that, like a variation of that, and that's how we get Soren into maybe onto Reach. Like, that would be like a good opening episode. Like Soren doing badass shit and Silver Team there to help.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have to drive home the like, this is the end of humanity angle, and you don't really get that vibe as much.
That's why I think like we need to lose something in episode 1 to then reinforce what you're saying, that Reach is Sanctuary. It is the last of the last. So I whether it's the rubble or another planet or colony that maybe we've seen or not seen, but I feel like there's going to be a similar opening to the beginning of season 1 that will be a defeat, or maybe a narrow victory that really doesn't feel like a victory, to then hammer home the fact that Reach is home and Reach is so important, and Reach. But we do need to have something for Soren to do. I mean, he's just kind of more or less on the run. We don't really know what he's doing. I think he's kind of searching for a purpose. And Halsey's also out there doing her own thing, trying to make sense of what was going on. It'll be interesting to see how kind of like if those two characters, how they navigate either the space or the other planets, whether they're on Reach or not. And while this all else is going on and the threat of the Covenant are just still kind of compounding. Next to that, we have episode 2, Sword, which for most Halo fans and lore enthusiasts, the immediate distinction and kind of things that trigger is Sword Base. It is a facility that's on Reach. It has a lot of story implications from the Halo Reach game and the novel Fall of Reach, as well as Shadows of Reach.
I think that's probably a fairly good shout. My only other thought on Sword, because the other reference to Sword that it could be, are we talking about the Halo that we don't know what it is yet, like the sword and the shield? Is this episode actually named after? We know the Covenant are after something, and it's the sword of this ancient race, and we don't know what it is? Could it equally be that? Someone going through Halsey's research, Ackerson, stuff like that. It's the only other sword reference that comes to mind.
Because Ackerson kind of enters the scene because Halsey has exited the scene, so to speak. So he could very early be rummaging through her lab or trying to make sense of things, and he can start discovering secrets or something like that. See what she's working on.
We could literally be at Sword Base on like that Forerunner thing, learning that actually this stuff exists. We do see in the trailers, we see more Forerunner like ruins and stuff and corridors and things. Like it could all, I suppose you have to set all this up too, because we didn't get a lot of that set up in season 1 either.
No, but to specify, Sword Base is actually built on top of a Forerunner site, and that's kind of part of the reason it gets some of its importance. Halsey was studying the Forerunner artifacts down there with her lab down there, and the Covenant eventually discover that there's Forerunner relics down there, and that's why the Covenant then get drawn to the Sword Base site once the invasion actually starts. So there could be a similar sort of like parallel between what happens in the games where we see Sword Base before the invasion and we see Sword Base afterwards. And so maybe there's some parallels there where we set up this kind of home base, this base of operation. Maybe this is where the Spartans are being deployed, or this is where their barracks are. There's some sort of like connection there. And then again, when the Fall of Reach eventually happens, this becomes a point of interest for everybody.
Yeah, it's, if memory serves right, it's a Forerunner ship crashed in the ice, isn't it? It's some sort of like Forerunner vessel. I think that's what Sword Base is built around, and that's what Halsey was analysing.
Yeah.
It also could be a good opportunity for Ackerson to introduce, I believe, I've seen some like material that mentions other Spartans. This could be a good opportunity to mention them too. Bring them up, that there's the possibility of other Spartans existing.
As in they they're from Sword Base.
Well, it could just be bringing them into the scene. You know, we may get. I'm thinking it's a good time to also like set up the Spartan 3 possibilities with here are Spartans that Silver Team do not know. Maybe not Noble Team specifically, but like I think you've got to set a lot of stuff up, and Sword Base seemed to be somewhere that Noble Team were around a fair wee bit during Reach, and like the next episode title is very much linked to Noble Team, so I'm wondering like I think I've seen promotional material discussed on Reddit where they were mentioning there are other actors who have Spartan names credited in this season, like adults. We're not talking about like Spartan 3 kids, we're talking about adults, and you're going like, well, Spartan adults might be a thing. We may need other Spartans that aren't Silver Team because we only really see the 4 of them. Like do they even mention other Spartans really?
I mean, they mention other Spartans, and yeah, but we only see Silver Team and then Soren, so really only those 5 in season 1. But they mention that there's more of them, and they're just around. But yeah, I mean, I think what could happen is that if we start seeing Ackerson a little bit more in these first 2 episodes, he can kind of introduce the Spartan 3 program, which he headlined in the core canon. Him and Halsey have had a long history of sort of being enemies, if you will, and kind of butting heads. He could bring them up to the fold and kind of, talk to the council, if you will, Parangoski and Lord Hood and everybody and Captain Keyes and say, these are my Spartans. These are my Spartan 3s. They're better, stronger, and all this kind of stuff, and they're better than Halsey's, and we should start enlisting them to doing what's going on, and that could start causing rifts between Silver Team and then these new Spartan 3s.
Yeah, I also, just as a thought while you're mentioning that, do we think there's the possibility that they dabble a little bit with like themes from Halo 4, and might it explain why Master Chief and that seems to be fighting elites at certain points unarmored? Could we see the sliding back of the Spartan 2s? We don't trust them. They're Halsey Spartans. Master Chief's a bit iffy. No armor for you, sir, until we get like the obvious, oh no, we need a hero, we need Master Chief. I wonder, will they dabble with things like this?
Yeah, they could take the armor away, I suppose. But I do think that there definitely could and very well be this sort of like dichotomy between 2s and 3s, and who do we trust and who's better, and yeah, out with the old and in with the new sort of like mentality. So yeah, I can kind of get behind that, and it'd be interesting to see how far they get along with that theme in the first 2 episodes, kind of before everything just goes wrong with the invasion. So that would, yeah, I could definitely see that being a possibility.
Yeah, and that like would all lead us into episode 3, which has a name we're all very familiar with.
Yeah, so episode 3 is kind of the beginning of the end, if you will, already. 3 episodes in. But it's titled Visgrad, or Visgrad.
I think they call it Visegrad, don't they? Isn't that how they pronounce it in Reach? Visegrad, I feel like. There's emphasis on the Visegrad. Because I think at the start, when he's like debriefing Carter on the comms, I think he says like Visegrad relay's gone dark.
Yeah, okay. I should have watched the cutscene.
I've watched that first cutscene
so long.
Yeah, I've watched it too many times just to see my Noble. That.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
That and the new Alexandria cutscene where you're like flying in the Falcon and you get good views of the armor the whole time. I've spent a lot of time rewatching that while I customized. It's the only reason I remember so well.
Well, like we're talking about the Halo Reach game that came out in, I think, 2011. The opening mission, Winter Contingency, is about Noble Team responding to the Visegrad communication relay being offline, but then we learning being sabotaged by the Covenant. And this event is like the first contact, or at least like military confirmation contact of the Covenant on Reach, that then launches the emergency directive Winter Contingency, which is that the Covenant have found Reach. We need to get to our battle stations and protect Reach. So this episode will be huge, I think, in that regard, because it will definitely set the tone of what's about to come. And the next episode is called Reach, and we've seen in trailers like buildings on fire and glassing beams and elites everywhere, and the name of the first Halo book is called The Fall of Reach. Like the Covenant attacks on Reach is probably the most well-known battle in the Halo extended lore. Next to Earth, I guess, and Halo 3. But outside of that, like this is the event that we really were predicting that could happen in season 1. I remember talking with someone of like, oh, season 1, everything's at Reach. Well, that's going to get destroyed sooner or later, if not this season, next. And so that's definitely where the season is going. And there's some talk that maybe it's going to be prolonged to where the Fall of Reach will be multiple episodes. I'm not too sure about that, but it seems like definitely episode 4 would be the Fall of Reach, and episode 3, Visegrad, would be kind of the prelude to that. And then this would be a good, if we don't see Spartan 3s by now, like this could be a great moment or like a tip of the hat. If they were to introduce Carter or someone like Carter, or even your own Spartan that you play in Halo Reach, kind of in this moment, reacting to the communications relay going down. That'd be an interesting kind of parallel.
Visegrad, I think, all sounds self-explanatory. Fall of Reach, yeah, like you said, it seems obviously that Reach starts to fall here. I think I can't see it falling in one go. It's gonna drag out. Like, it has to be the theme for a while, I assume, because there's a later episode title that gives me a thought about some other stuff going on.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a bit. So I can see the shit hitting the fan all over at the same time. I am excited to see this weird single city planet of Reach get glassed. It's a bit weird. It just seems to be Reach City on Reach planet.
Yeah, I mean,
one Reach.
You definitely don't want it to happen, but yeah, it's what we like. It's one of the beautiful things about the game Halo Reach, that like you're fighting and fighting and fighting, but like every mission you play just slowly backstabs you, and you think you take 2 steps forward, but you just keep taking 2 or 3 or 4 steps back, and it's just this losing battle that you just keep fighting, and then the game is just so well done to where you're really trying to hold on, but the Covenant just keep winning. So that's kind of what I want out of the show, is that like we all know what's going to happen, and it's like we want to see those heroic moments to where, even though we know kind of where it's going to go, it's about how we get there is what we want to see.
Yeah, I think like we've seen the clips of Chief at a funeral burning someone at a pyre. I think we lose a member of Silver Team here.
Yeah.
I reckon sometime in the mid-season. I do think it's going to be the bait and switch that's coming, though. I don't think it's going to be as obvious as we think. Should I just talk about it before we get that far? Because we've seen clips and bits and pieces. I think Kai will die during this, but she won't actually die. I think they're giving her the Kurt treatment.
Oh, yeah?
I think that's what we'll get.
Well, it's interesting if Kai were to become Kurt, because they did that to Kurt to train the Spartan 3s, but if there's already Spartan 3s, is there a reason to turn her into Kurt? And to just kind of give people backstory, when the Spartan 3 program was first began and they were training the now orphans and all the children that they gathered for that program, Oni basically like abducted Spartan Kurt on like a mid mission, and like this other Spartans were just like, where'd he go? And they thought he like just like fell off the ship or something.
They think he dies. It's like a 0G mission, and his backpack fails, and they're like, oh yeah, no, Kurt's like flown off into space and died mid mission. Yeah. So I think they fake his death completely, and then he is like smuggled off to train. But I think they'll have used their magic, like TV magic, to be like, oh no, we can just like train Spartan 3s anyway whatsoever, it's fine, but we need a commander for them, and that can't be Arkeson. I think that'll be the setup, because like Kai kind of straddles the line between, I think, Kelly and Kurt as a character, because she's definitely got the like the human, the personality factor, all the rest of it, and she's also got that sort of like Kelly attitude and humor going on. So I think she's going to be the leader, because it'll be an Ackerson situation of going, I've made the Spartan 3s, but I can't lead them into battle. A Spartan has to. And to foreshadow a later episode title, she will be the Leonidas to their 300 Spartan 3s.
I like that. I think actually that could work, to where it's just implied that they've been trained, these Spartan 3s, and yeah, they just need a commander, a leading person on the battlefield with them in armor and all that. And I like that. That'd be interesting.
And she is the only other Spartan on Silver Team with a personality, because Riz and Vanek have had the character development of set pieces. So it can't be them.
Yeah, but I do think that Vanek also had like a traditional Spartan tenacity that sometimes we wish Chief had a little bit more of. Riz, though, I do think that there's a lot of things in store for her, because I think she might be featured the most of all the Spartans next to John. Like, even Kai, I think, had a few kind of hero shots, but I don't know. When I was watching, I just seemed to notice Riz more, and I think I barely even remember Vanek being in there.
Next episode?
Yeah, so the next episode is Ilaria, which Ilaria does exist in core canon. It's only ever really mentioned. It's a outer colony planet, also known as Eldoros 2. And it was famed for its like rich ore deposits, and it had like a good economy and government and all that, but then eventually slowly the government, I guess, just kind of crippled, was mismanaged. Maybe some infighting and civil war and kind of insurrection happened, and eventually got dismantled and the economy collapsed. Then now it's just home to various desperate and dangerous criminals and smugglers and pirates and things. So it's kind of one of those catch-all, just piratey outlaw planets. And it's primarily mentioned in like the Kelly Gay novels with Ryan Forge and some of those other Band of Misfits, almost like a Guardians of a Galaxy type of a vibe. So I'm curious if kind of where this would tie in, and I wonder if this is like maybe a storyline of like Halsey and Soren, and like because maybe they're doing something independent to Reach. So while Reach is like still falling and the Spartans are fighting it and all that, we still have this parallel story going on, and we're following Soren and Halsey, and maybe they find their way, or one of them finds their way to this planet, and something there leads to like a discovery or something. Because right now it's just kind of a vacant sort of set piece that 343 and everyone can like just kind of pull from. It's kind of like the Rubble in a way, to where like we only had a little bit of knowledge of the Rubble in core canon, and 343 then kind of built this own character out of the location, and that's what they're using for TV show. I feel like Ilaria is kind of following a similar kind of path, that it's only ever really mentioned in the books, and so they're able to really expand upon it in the show.
I'm taking a vibe from it. Is it going to be their version of Venezia? Like, is it just we're not the UNSC planet?
Yeah.
Because we've like,
they got a little bit of that on Madrigal, didn't they?
Yeah, a wee bit. But I feel like it's also a little bit more organized, or else they're like saving that for later. Like, I don't know, Ilaria. It could be. It's just saddled weirdly in the middle. I assume it's going to show like something to do with the civilian toll of war, or else the Soren angle of everything. But unless they go the other extreme and we find out that this is more like Silent Storm, like, you know, something like that maybe.
Yeah, I think it's a canvas that the show can just kind of fill with whatever they want. And and it'll just be interesting if we're, you know, or maybe that's where like Chief and them go after the fall. They go away, but instead of going and stumbling upon Halo like in the games, they go to this planet and kind of regroup and kind of go from there. It'll be kind of interesting to see how the season kind of unfolds, whether like plot A is like all at Reach, or plot A is at Reach for the first half, and then once it falls, we then segue into this other kind of like planet hopping, galaxy traversing until we eventually stumble upon Halo.
I think Reach is falling in the background of this episode. I think it's going to drag on for a bit. I think the two are going to run parallel.
Yeah, because you're right. Because looking at another episode, it could tie back to Reach. And it's just kind of like these episode titles are just highlighting maybe the B plot for a few moments.
Yeah, we do see a scene of like Chief on a burning surface, and it looks to be Halsey talking to him. So like, I think she's going to be skulking around Reach for a while. I can see this ticking over for a bit while this other plot runs alongside it. I don't think it'll be a one and done anyway.
Yeah. I mean, TV, and they even did this the last season, they had A plot, B plot, C plot type of a thing. So it's just a matter of how they want to structure it all. But yeah, no, I think I can see it going either way. Like either these episode titles are kind of following what Chief is doing, but the Reach conflict can just happen throughout the entirety of the season, which honestly is probably just better instead of just wrapping it up in one episode and just moving on. Like it was just, okay, we're done. We did it. Moving on to the next one. So, but the next episode title is probably the most intriguing for me because it's called Onyx, which, if you don't know, is this Forerunner megastructure, also known as like a shield world. And it is like its first layer is like a habitable Earth-like terrain, but then underneath it's just filled with mechanisms and Sentinel constructs and Forerunner architecture and the kind of inner workings. And then deep within it is a Dyson sphere, which holds a miniature slip space bubble that the shield world is protecting.
Yeah.
And the Forerunners, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Forerunners utilize the shield word to protect them from a Halo event.
I think, yeah, if I remember right from the fall of Onyx itself, the planet, is literally almost entirely built of Sentinels. They're a different type to the ones we get in the rest of the novels, but that outer shell, the whole thing is almost entirely Sentinels. And then in it in the middle is this slip space bubble with a portal, and in that is the shield world Trevelyan. So Onyx and Trevelyan are actually two different things, because Trevelyan that comes around later was contained within Onyx, and Onyx was a whole other structure in itself, and that's the one that the Spartan 3s are trained on, because humanity discovered this place and then basically like didn't know what to do with it and uber classified it, and it's like that Obi-Wan in the prequel series. Oh, there should be a planet here. There's not. There's no planet. It never existed. Don't talk about it. So that was the perfect place to train the super secret Spartan 3s. So there's a lot of potential if this is this universe's version of that planet, because it's a very important planet for a lot of reasons.
Onyx is just one of those locations is that it's just so complex, and you can kind of keep going down the rabbit hole with all the books that they have about it and the stories and stuff, which I think is why it's so interesting that they're introducing it, because you can spend so much time on it. It'd be interesting if like this almost becomes like the next refuge for the UNSC and Oni after the fall of Reach, almost like what Frostbox World is, which is where some of the Oni heads retreat to during the Guardian event during Halo 5. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much they tell us, because they can really go into it. They can continue diving into the Forerunners. There's they can definitely, the show has a lot to work with introducing Onyx.
I think this might tie back into that like plot line from season 1 with the whale and the brief appearance you have of the monitor. Could not think of the word there for a second. So like I think that could be tying back into this as well. Like, we'll maybe get mention of slipspace portals and all that stuff, and it's a great way to take characters off the board and kind of follow the story. We can get rid of Halsey and a few Silver Team for the end of the series, because as we tick along, we can't have Master Chief get to the Halo with friends.
True. I didn't even think of that. Like, do they put Chief alone with Cortana, like, in the game, or do you...
I think they go that way still. I think you have to take pieces off the board, and if you potentially have Kai there, and Halsey's still alive if she finds out about it...
If you kill off one of Silver Team, if you adjust Kai to being the leader of a Spartan 3 battalion, and you slide one of the other ones off with Halsey, and they're in Onyx, kind of like what Tom and Lucy did in Glasslands, then now Chief is alone for Halo. And now you have the remaining Spartans, and then Soren's also already doing his own thing. And so they can all be at different points of the galaxy, and then going forward, we then follow them on their different trials and tribulations and engagements and things. You know, that way they're not always together and always going through this, but they're off on their own, fighting their own thing.
Yeah.
Well, to kind of recap a little bit, I wrote a lot of notes here, but tidbits of Onyx that if we didn't touch on already is that the Spartan 3s, that they were secretly held there and trained there. That's where Ackerson went and started it up. He brought Mendez, which was the same kind of like drill sergeant that trained the Spartan 2s. He also went over there to train the Spartan 3s. We talked about how Kurt was presumed killed but kidnapped and basically reinserted into the training program, and all that happened at Onyx. So maybe this could even be like a flashback, I guess, to see the birth of the Spartan 3s from Ackerson's point of view. But the Spartan 3s, they're designed to be cheaper, mass-produced, and expendable. And they, like we said earlier, they were Ackerson's sort of like counter to Halsey's Spartan 2s. And since Oni owns the program, they basically gave him some of Halsey's research, and Ackerson had to kind of pry to break her encryption to find her secret research to kind of make the Spartan 3s as best as he could. And that's also how their relationship continued to kind of grow negatively, is that they constantly were at odds at each other. That's the backstory between Onyx and the Spartan 3s and Ackerson, and how they all kind of are encapsulated together. And so since that Ackerson is going to be a formidable character this season, all of that has the potential to being explored as the season progresses. Anything else you want to touch on before we move on to Thermopylae?
No, like you could go in circles all day just wondering about Onyx. I think it's probably laying the groundwork for that image we see of Kai standing in front of the parade field of Spartan 3s. It'll probably set all that up and drop a few other things, and I think it's a good potential to get people off the table, but that's probably, we'll have to wait and see. Thermopylae is an interesting episode title.
What is the Battle of Thermopylae in the real world?
Oh, the real world. I was going to go with the 300 movie reference here because that's what people are going to know.
I mean, that's close enough.
It is, yeah. It is the battle fought in 480 BC between the Persian Empire and the Spartans. It is Leonidas against Xerxes. You've seen all that in the 300 movie. Everyone has a six-pack. Everyone looks amazing. It is a smaller force defending against an overwhelming wave of enemies and winning the day. They block the pass at Thermopylae. They hold the Persians off. They defeat an empire, or, well, they delay the invasion of an empire, is, I think, the gist of that battle. It says, your brilliant notes here. It lasted for 7 days, 3 of which is direct fighting. The Persians eventually learn how to outflank them, but it still doesn't work. I think this is where those 300 CGI Spartans are going. I think this episode will be all about Kai and our disposable Spartan 3 friends.
And so you kind of think this might be the actual last stand to Reach. Because if this conflict of Reach is lasting multiple episodes, it kind of would make sense that it would build to this moment.
You do hear that line where Captain Keyes is addressing in one of the trailers the soldiers and the Marines, basically going like, everyone that stands here tonight will die, but for every minute we hold the line, more innocent people can escape. And all of those Spartan 3s, if I go back and look at the image here, because I have it on my phone, those are condors in the background, and condors are all slipspacey. So we can easily bust these 300 Spartans to Reach to like save the day and turn the tide of battle at the very end and delay the inevitable. Because the Battle of Thermopylae doesn't stop the eventual war between the Persian Empire and the Spartans. It just delays it.
Enough.
Yeah, I think that's what this episode's going to be. I think this is going to be Kai and her Spartan 3s coming to save the day. And that will be the end of the battle. I think this episode is going to set up, like, either this episode will be them, the last of them, getting off Reach as the Spartans hold the line. And I think there's a very real chance that they actually kill Kai with this. If she is the Kurt substitute, Kurt goes down saving some of his Spartans.
Yeah.
I could see this being her last stand with her soldiers, and Chief has to get off planet with Captain Keyes and Cortana, and I assume their version of the Pillar of Autumn, and anyone else has to either get off or survive. So I think this will be a big episode. This is where the budget's going, I think. This is where the big battle's going to be.
Yeah, it's the penultimate episode of the season, so it's definitely going to have some sort of stinger and set pieces and things like that, in addition to the last episode. Something that's also interesting is that there's 8 episodes and 4 directors, and each of them directed 2 episodes, so it's kind of like 2 parts is the way that I'm curious if it's going to feel, to where like each block that the director directed are kind of 2 halves to a 2-part sort of moment. So if this is the end, then the last episode will just pick that up and then kind of take us to where it's eventually going to go. And like, I wouldn't be surprised if we're on the Pillar of Autumn escaping Reach and we literally get a recreation of that first Halo mission. I mean, that's probably what we all want, and you know, maybe they won't do that, but the kind of scenes of all the Spartans fighting without their armor to me kind of looks like Pillar of Autumn architecture, because it's very confined spaces as opposed to maybe a military base or something a little bit more grand and open. But maybe instead of them all getting in their cryopods and their armor being right there, already in their armor, they just are there around and they have to like fight to get to their armor and help everybody else escape. And we literally end with them looking out the window and seeing the Halo.
That's a possibility. I can see it going that way, or I can literally see it being crash landing on the Halo, like you said. It's one or the other. I don't think you see that scene, or you see that like image of the Halo in space. I don't think that's the last scene of the episode, so I assume that's near the start. I'm guessing somewhere in Thermopylae we will jump ship like the end of the game and get out there. I would love to see us hit ground on Halo before the season's over. Like, to actually touch boots on ground would be pretty cool.
The only thing about touching boots on ground is I don't know what kind of story you would tell to then end the season, unless because it would almost be similar to what they actually did at the end of season 1, where Chief and McKee kind of have this transcendence moment. And he's like transported to the ring and is like, what is this place? And we get just a glimpse. But like, it's really the beginning of a new story when you're on the Halo ring. So it kind of makes sense that we wouldn't explore it really this season, because it's really the beginning of something else.
I don't know. I think you could finish, like I could see it finishing on the very last sort of like the last thing we see in the Halo TV show this season is Chief climbing from the debris of the Bumblebee and just standing there in that like open meadow looking at the bridge and the waterfall and just slowly panning his eyes up at the arc, and then, crackly communication from Captain Key saying that we're going in, or the Pillar of Autumn tearing over the sky above them. Like, something like that to finish the season off, I think could be cool. Cortana saying to Chief in his helmet, oh, Keyes is going to take the ship in manually, that idiot. Like, that could finish up the season and be very cool. Or it'll cut back to the Prophets, and I think the very last scene will be the Arbiter. Like, a reveal of, we don't have a Covenant character now, because our Covenant character got sexed and disposed of.
Yeah, and there have been online reports of people seeing the Arbiter armor in the show. And I think I saw a still. I tried to scrub through it myself, but it's kind of blurry, or at least the ones I was looking at.
I'm not convinced either way on that, because a lot of people also point out that a lot of the Elite armor in this season is really like sort of design flirred. Not just, it may not be the Arbiters, but they all look very fancy armor.
Yeah, so and even if it is the Arbiter, like, it wouldn't be Thel, or at least I hope it's not Thel, because Thel doesn't become the Arbiter till after Halo gets destroyed. So, but there are plenty of other Arbiters that they could pull from. But that would be a good way to, like, introduce that title, unless they're just, continuing the reimagining. So, but yeah, that's what we got, though. That's the season right there. I mean, as best as we can kind of predict. And I mean, obviously, if you want to know what's going on with Halo, you should just play Halo CE if you haven't. But yeah, that's it. Any other tidbits of core canon that you think would pertain to any possibility of events of season 2 of the Halo show?
Oh, like, there could potentially be so much. I want to see... I hope we see other Spartans, not the Spartan 3s, whether they're Spartan 2s or like a Noble Team version in this universe.
A Noble Team Easter egg would be awesome.
Yeah.
Like during the Battle of Reach.
There are a few shots doing the rounds, and I thought originally it was a gentleman who is followed by Kate Kenners on Instagram called Nathan Wiley. And there is a photo up now. Originally, I thought it was stunt doubles for Silver Team, but it shows 4 people in like the undersuits. I think it still could be stunt doubles, but I saw a few people saying online that the gentleman in question is actually credited somewhere with a Spartan name, whether that's on IMDb or something, I don't know. So, like, I would love to see other Spartans, and I would love to see other Spartans winning or losing. I would love their version of a Noble Team. I think that would be cool. There's a lot of potential. I don't want them to waste the Fall of Reach games, especially when we're calling out things like Visegrad and stuff. I want that to be used well. If we're going to blow our stuff on this alternate timeline, and you're gonna like play about with it, do a good job of it.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think those Spartans flying through the sky, I think if you get your like version of the SAM mission and stuff like that, I'd love to see that, whatever that is.
Yeah, that would be interesting if they pulled that off, and be really cool.
Yeah.
And again, that's another opportunity to kill someone off
And do cool stuff, yeah.
Reduce who Chief has, so then he's all alone on the ring.
I want to see Soren do cool shit. I don't want Soren to just be like the space criminal. I want him to do cool, not quite Spartan stuff.
Yeah, I think he's in that fight with Chief and Riz when they're fighting in the corridors without their armor. I mean, it could be Vanek, but the character looked bald, and Soren is bald, and Vanek, at least in season 1, had a little bit of hair. So I don't know, because it's from the back and you can't see his arm. But to me, it looked like Soren from behind.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what way the storyline addresses Remote Control Master Chief from the end of season 1.
Oh gosh,
the change.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, I've seen a few people say it's a good opportunity to like soft reboot his character and the plot, and just be like, Chief suffered a massive trauma, Cortana helped him off the battlefield, and now Chief's a slightly different character, and Cortana looks all professional Halo Infinite, the weapon.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're making her appearance to be more like the weapon in Halo Infinite just to make the one-on-one connection. But it would be weird if she just was the weapon, because there's no reason that Cortana died or did anything. Like, it should still be Cortana. She just changed her appearance, and now she just looks a little bit more like the weapon.
Yeah, she may have just gone a bit more professional, but I have seen, like, they have blended a lot of stuff, because looking through Reddit, people have been discussing how Chief's armor seems to be an amalgamation of all his armor, including Gen 3, because he has a grapple shot on his forearm in some still images. So they could just be like meshing more stuff together, and they've maybe gone with like a slightly more professional
I'm okay
look
with. I mean, I think it kind of makes sense a little bit, because it's like, well, this is what's currently going on in the game, so like let's bring it into the TV show now, and because it's its own thing, to kind of throw things in a pot, mix it all up, and kind of do it all at once.
Yeah, I do like, we've seen the bit in the trailer where Chief's helmet is cracked. They're going for that. That comes from the graphic novel where he fights the Didact and he like smashes his helmet open, although I think they've definitely used that once or twice before, and you can see his eye through it.
Yeah, I remember that panel.
I would love to see Chief get his ass kicked in his armor and have Ackerson supply him basically with the Gen 3 Infinite armor. Something like that, so that Ackerson could prove his loyalty. Like, what if this other armor we see with the grapple shot and all is him going like, I've built you some really good fucking armor because we need the Master Chief, and this is your, the Dark Knight Rises moment.
I kind of like the idea of Chief gaining the trust of Ackerson, and it's like, we're kind of torn to see like, well, who really is the villain? Is it Halsey or is it Ackerson? Like, it's depending upon the perspective, it's a little questionable. Because Ackerson even redeems himself a little bit. I didn't even know this, but when I was looking him up, he like gets captured by a Jiralhane shipmaster and is tortured. And he basically gives them false information to help save his brother. He's like, there's a sacred key, a Forerunner key that you have to find in Cleveland, Ohio. So don't glass it. And then that like saves his brother. And then he's like, yeah, just kidding. It's actually nothing. And the brute just like decapitates him, and it's like, well, crap.
Yeah, he's not a terrible person.
Brutal.
He's
not.
I want at least one scene where Ackerson's standing somewhere going, this is the Master Chief we deserve, not the Master Chief we need, and like, here's the suit of armor, go. Something like that might be cool. I like, it's nice in a way. I know back at the start we were all a little disgruntled with the idea of this being its own timeline, but I do like the idea of like plucking bits out of canon all over the place and mixing them together.
Yeah, I agree.
Kind of freeing. I know a lot of people in a disingenuous way go, ugh, it's fan fiction, but I think there's a lot to be said for like splicing stuff about sometimes.
I think the issue, at least with me watching the first season, is that like I'm fully on board with them picking and choosing and hodgepodging things as long as it still felt Halo. And I think there are just a lot of moments in the first season that didn't do that, to where some of the things are like, okay, you're kind of doing your own thing, and so it doesn't really feel Halo. But all the other stuff that you were doing, where you kind of pick and choose and put things in a pot and it simmered and you made your own thing out of it, it felt like Halo and it felt great. So hopefully they just do more of the latter this time around. So, well, should we wrap up here? We're hitting about an hour now.
Yeah,
and,
I
think we've kind of given a lot of perspective and some insight into a little bit of the extended lore and what we're able to learn from effectively 3 trailers and 8 episode titles. Season 2 premieres on February 8th on Paramount Plus. Episodes 1 and Episode 2 will premiere, and then every Thursday thereafter will be the remaining episodes for all 8, with the season finale on March 21st. Aaron, thank you so much for joining me, and the listeners of Halo TV Plus, thank you guys for listening in. Next episode will be me and David doing a retrospective look on Season 1 and see kind of if our perspectives have changed over the last year and a half, if we noticed something we didn't before, and kind of talk about based off of season 1, what do we want to see kind of on a thematic level. I feel like Aaron and I today, we discussed what we think season 2 would be on maybe a story and kind of plot point level, but the approach that David and I will look at will be a little bit more thematically and kind of the tone and how they accomplished season 1 and maybe how we want them to accomplish season 2. But like I mentioned at the top of our show, you can find every episode to Halo TV Plus on our website and on the feed if you want to re-listen to or just listen to and explore our season 1 content. You can also check out all of our other Evolved shows on our website, Evolved Halo, and on their own respective feeds. It also features links to our Discord server, Patreon page, social media, Instagram, all that stuff. And once again, another shout out to our patrons for supporting Evolved and making the show possible. If you want to become a patron or learn what that's about, you can visit patreon.com/HaloEvolved. And if you like this show, rate us, leave a review. We greatly appreciate all the feedback that we receive from our listeners to improve the quality of the show. You could also leave an email and a voicemail if you want to continue and participate in the conversation. You can email us at podcastevolved@gmail.com, or you can call our Google phone number at 205-EVOLVED, which is 205-386-5833. And with that, I was your host, Oran, and until next time, evolve.
Evolved.